So on this 50 problems with the church video that I spotted on YouTube, here's Jeremy. He's the guy who apparently made it. And Jeremy's done a lot of, what should I say? He's done a lot of research and really articulated things very carefully, especially starting in his CES letter. And rather than make a mess of telling his story for him, I've seen some things that he's done, and I've read his CES letter. Letter to CES asking some questions, to explain a number of things. I think it was about 73, concerns he had with church history and that sort of thing. And then, as soon as he'd done that, he got attacked by LDS Apologetics. And since Dan Peterson has been, fired, I guess I'm not perfect on this, but anyway, Farms went from BYU to the Hinckley Institute and then got disbanded. And Dan Peterson apparently looks to me like he's writing stuff for Fair Mormon now. Unfair Mormon. Anyway, using kind of the same tactics against Jeremy's stuff as normally used by Fair Mormon, or should I say by Dan Peterson. I don't want to. I've read some stuff on Fair Mormon that seemed like they're trying to do a good job. However, it's kind of one-sided, and it's as the church was claiming in the gospel topics essays introduction. It said that the Lord wasn't saying in section 88 that one opinion was the way to go. Well, they have been very one opinion oriented in the gospel topic essays, and not shown information that didn't support the viewpoint that they were actually trying to establish. So, which is exactly what apologetics are about. They're about arguing and proving a point, a debate on a religious subject, not in presenting to an audience, or especially of parishioners, a fair and balanced historical, in-depth, detailed essay covering all aspects. And so I've noticed that it's a very slanted viewpoint that I've seen on the apologetic sites, Farms in particular. And it's been a while since I've read those things. And I also noticed that in addition to a lot of spin being placed and in kind of outlandish ideas or theories that might give a possible way for things to work out, to pound a square peg into a round hole. In addition to that, the tactics used to defame people, basically, what jumped out at me when I saw like Dan Peterson attacking D. Michael Quinn and some of his work, like things like early Mormonism and the magic worldview, where Michael Quinn had done a tremendous amount of detailed historical research on Joseph Smith and people in his day, and the magical practices, the things he was doing, the necromancy, and I mean, he's documented things. He had documented the seer stones and so forth that the church said that they didn't have. The LeGrand Richards said they didn't have in their vault even. And I liked LeGrand Richards. Maybe he didn't know, right? So anyway, what I noticed is that Dan Peterson would attack the personality, the personal. You find something wrong. So here's Jeremy, and here he's got all these things he's written about. Now right here, this is a response, I believe, updates in response to what Fair Mormon has said. But Dan Peterson would look for some little mistake and then castigate the the person and find some personality flaw and make it all about that. And you know what I'd noticed is I was kind of a big fan of Ezra Taft Benson growing up, and Ezra Taft Benson was promoting the viewpoint of freedom and that the Constitution was divinely inspired and so forth, and that there were elements and secret societies and not completely secret societies like the Council on Foreign Relations and so forth that were dedicated to merging the United States into a world government and losing sovereignty and so forth. And so Ezra Taft Benson supported groups that were exposing this agenda with factual evidence. And then I noticed that elements from that sort of side of society, from Council on Foreign Relations and sympathizers and part of what's considered the liberal, but also the Republican, which is also dominated by these same people at the top, were using smear tactics on groups that were seeking to educate people. And then when I saw the LDS Apologetics people doing the same thing, trying to find a personality flaw, a sin, a mistake in an essay or a book or something, and then deride the person, associate them with everything that's got a bad taste or something. They're using the same tactics that those who were destroying everything that was virtuous and lovely or perceived to be in America. So that's apparently continues to be the case here. And anyway, Jeremy's just done a lot of work, as you can see. Click on he articulates so much. Okay, he's got First Vision, Book of Abraham, polyandry and the prophets, whatnot. The things that issues that he and Fair are issues he's written about, and that Fair goes ahead and tries to discredit him on. And then obviously we can see that some of these coincide to things that are on LDS.org now in the essays. They've chosen a few battles, not all of them. They got the Book of Abraham on there now, and yeah, it's okay. So it's too much for us to figure out. They're missing pieces of the papyri, all that sort of thing. Well, Jeremy gets into the details on that. On the LDS.org site, you'll just see that basically they'll come to the same conclusion as always. We don't have enough data to figure out. Just pray about it, and Jesus will tell you by the Holy Spirit. And so maybe he didn't really need the papyri to get inspired. Okay, great. So he spent enough money to buy like 300 acres of land in Nauvoo or in Kirtland, Ohio at the time, to buy this papyri and some Egyptian mummies so that he could get inspired to have a revelation directly about the what Abraham might have written, since his translation that he gave has zero to do with the papyri that he bought. Egyptologists have no problem saying that he had completely mistranslated everything. Not only the papyri, but he did an Egyptian alphabet and gave meanings for various hieroglyphs, and the Egyptologists can now translate that stuff. He came up with like 175 words in description of one that's like a 2-word thing, That It's just unbelievable when you really look at the details. And that's what's important to do, to look at the details of these things, because we get generalizations and false narrative comparisons and so forth, and similes given as examples in these things, and like is seen here with the Fair Mormon stuff. They'll agree on certain points, and then they'll twist everything or try to obfuscate the real issue. Just like the gospel essays, they have a lot of information, but it's not the pertinent information dealing with the real issue in many cases, which happens to be, does it appear that such and such had to do with how does it go along with Jesus Christ guiding the church. And like in the race and the priesthood, when they talk about American history and everybody else was doing this and that and the other, and of course they characterize everybody as pro-slavery when 1.5% of the Americans actually owned black slaves. There were thousands and thousands of white slaves. The church thing, the essay mentions that to be a citizen you had to be white and free, a free white man. Why does it say you had to be a free white man? Because there were lots and lots of white people that were slaves. Hundreds of thousands came here in slavery. Perhaps more than half of the white people that came during the colonial time came in chains. But you don't see that in your American history books because it's not the narrative that they want to teach. Anyway, instead of listing pertinent things like what does it say in the book of Moses, 7th chapter, what does it say in the book of Abraham, then about, turning people black and not giving them the priesthood, or what does it say about skin color and being a curse and a mark, in the Book of Mormon, where it clearly calls the Lamanites all sorts of degrading names and says they were cursed with a black skin so that they would be loathsome, that they were filthy, and so that the Nephites wouldn't mix with them. So, it was clearly what it was, stating that it was of God, done by God, the Lord spake it, and it was done in order to segregate the people, to keep the righteous Nephites away from those wicked Lamanites. And now, the church essay says God created everybody equal, He loves everybody equal, and skin color has nothing to do with a curse from God or sin. And it's, they don't bother to put the LDS scriptures, which are actually the primary evidence in the subject. And it relates to, is Jesus guiding the church? So did He just change His mind now? Not only that, did He just not reveal anything truthful from, Joseph Smith on about it, or from Brigham on, who's the guy they basically label as the racist, and everybody else was just clueless and following the crowd, which is exactly what prophets are supposed to not do. Supposed to tell us, hey, God wants you to do something different. But no, the prophets just did what the rest of society was doing, is what they're saying. So, anyway, Jeremy's been really concise here, and shown, you click on Book of Abraham, and he's got item by item with what he's, found. And I'll say, I did read the CES letter, and I didn't agree with every single point, or the point of view that Jeremy might have had on certain issues. But overall, he's been very articulate, and for people like Dan Peterson to try to take him apart and discredit him, I haven't seen what Peterson said about him, so I just saw down below that Peterson was doing that sort of thing with Fair, and I didn't see what all of it was, but I've seen him do it before, and Jeremy appears to be a guy just trying to do honest research, and I don't think it's right to use that approach on him. Just deal with the issues and not try to destroy people.